Hello, everyone. I'm going to get my chat on so I can see y'all. Well, see what y'all have to say. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. This is Stonebelt's webinar, Making End-of-Life Planning Accessible. So today, y'all hearing from me today. Usually we have guest speakers, but y'all are hearing from me today. So today, in case you haven't heard about Stonebelt, who we are, what we do, I'll tell you a little bit about us. Stonebelt, we are a service provider, a nonprofit, community-based service provider that provides a wide range of support areas and support services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and neurodivergent folks. We're located in Bloomington, Bedford, and Columbus, Indiana, so South Central Indiana, and we serve people in and around those areas. I am typically your host, Sarah McKenney, and also I act as the spiritual support coordinator for Stonebelt ARC. In a few minutes, actually, I'm just going to do it right now while I'm talking, and I have the chat up. I am putting in the chat box a link, if I can do two things at once. All right. So and you know what? I didn't send that to everyone. I sent that to my mysterious panelists who aren't with me today. Let's try that again. Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay, so that is the link for you all to donate. So we do offer these, and I continue to try and offer these webinars for free because we want it to be available to you all. We don't want finance to be a barrier for you all to get these tools. So that being said, typically we have guest speakers and people and panelists who are coming on here to speak, and we want to pay them. We don't pay them much. We pay them a little stipend for their time and efforts, but we want to be able to do that. Oh, somebody's telling me I misspelled donate. There we go again. Okay, let's try this again. Stonebelt.org/donate. Okay, there we go. Try that again. All right. Okay, so yes, we ask you to please donate, and so then we can bring guest speakers on here and give them a little money for their time and efforts. This is a part of the 2024 webinar series. Every year for the last 3 or 4 years, I'm losing count, we have put out 4 to 5 webinars a year, all on a variety of different topics, but within the realm of disability and spirituality, and specifically, for the most part, regarding people with intellectual developmental disabilities and neurodivergent folks and spirituality. But really, our audience, just like you all, are pretty diverse in why you're coming to us. So we do put these out with the thought that people with disabilities themselves, family, faith communities or clergy members, service providers, DSPs, direct support professionals, really anybody who might be in that relationship with one another on this topic. We want to try and provide you various tools, which means our topics can really be quite broad, even within the sphere of disability and spirituality. So that being said, if you would please, when you get off of this webinar, you should be triggered to your computer should pop up a survey. I would really appreciate it if you could please do that survey And let me know what you want to hear more about. What are topics that are popping up for you? Maybe stressors, challenges, just things that you need to want to find out more about. Anything like that. Love to hear what those topics might be. And I can pull in all of those. I know lots of people in the field, and I'd love to bring those people to you so that you know more about what all is out there, what those resources are out there. So please, I ask you to check out that survey and fill that out. All of our past webinars are on our website. So you can go to www.stonebelt.org/spiritual-support. That's also on your screen, and I'll put it here in the chat box here in a moment. And then we also have our Facebook page where you can also look at the webinars in our recordings. Those go in our video section on our Facebook page, as we do this Facebook Live as well. So two different options. Many of you are kind of used to Zoom. This isn't as much of a new thing anymore. However, I know each time we get onto Zoom, the options might have changed depending on how they have set it up. So for our purposes, you will notice that your microphone is muted and your video is not on. So we do ask you to communicate through the chat. Please put in the chat your comments, thoughts, discussion while we are having while I'm talking today, and talk amongst yourselves. Happy to for anybody who learns through discussion and thinking out loud. Feel free to dump that into the chat and converse with each other. Also, feel free to dump in your personal information. What's your name? Where are you from? Why are you here? Maybe your professional information of what you do. Anything like that you might want to share with one another for networking purposes, please put that in there. You're welcome to do so if you choose. For Q&A, this will be kind of relaxed, so I will be trying to answer some questions throughout, but we'll definitely have a solid Q&A time at the end as well. So please use that Q&A box. You'll see that icon. That icon will be there for you at the bottom of your screen in your Zoom options. And you can also turn on closed captioning. So that closed captioning setting is turned on. So then you can either choose to turn that on or off for yourselves. So that is also available to you. If you, for accessibility purposes, cannot type in your typing in your answers or your questions or is inaccessible to you, you can click on the raise hand icon, and I can actually unmute your microphone, and you can talk that way and ask your questions that way. Okay. This is a lot of information about me. For those of you who don't know me, I am, again, the spiritual support coordinator for Stone Belt ARC, and my main job is to support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and neurodivergent folks in their spiritual needs, exploring what those are, and then helping to make sure that they have access to whomever or wherever they need in order to get those spiritual needs met. I developed the spiritual support program in November of 2017, and we continue to grow, expand, learn, and play with what this program can be. I received my Master's of Divinity at Columbia Theological Seminary in 2012, and I just received my Doctorate of Ministry in Disability and Ministry at Western Theological Seminary earlier this year. And then there's a few other things about me. And then I'll also note, I also come with the identity of being somebody with a disability, and as I experience life through the lens of dyslexia and ADHD. So I bring that experience with me, even though I work with people with intellectual developmental disabilities, all of whom we all experience life slightly different, as we are all different from one another, and definitely don't have that same exact experience of disability. Okay, so y'all are here. The topic is end of life planning, supporting people with intellectual developmental disabilities. If you don't know, I'll use intellectual developmental disabilities for short is IDD. So if you hear me say IDD, what I mean is intellectual and or developmental disabilities. That's kind of the shorthand. You may also hear me say DSP. That stands for Direct Support Professional. So those are maybe the hired caregivers for people that work with people with IDD. Not all states or service providers call them the same, but that is what we or the industry, professional industry calls them, is DSP. Feel free if I also say other like terms that you don't know, type that in the chat or the Q&A, and I can clarify any of the terms that I use today. I try not to be in my clinical world and only use terms that people in the field know. So please let me know if you need more information or clarification on terms. Okay, so I think we're going to start, speaking of terms, we're going to start with what even is end of life. What does that mean? What does that refer to? Because I don't want people to be confused with that terminology and think that I'm talking about something else. So National Cancer Institute, this is their definition. Their definition is care given to people who are near the end of life, their end of life, and have stopped treatment to cure or control their disease. So end of life care includes physical, emotional, social, spiritual support for patients and their families. The goal of end of life care is to control pain and other symptoms so the patient can be comfortable as possible. End of life care may include palliative care, supportive care, and hospice care, also called, all are in the branch of comfort care. Okay. For today's purposes, we're even going to expand end of life care to people who may be, they've been given a diagnosis that that there is no cure, that they are likely to die of, and they are actively dying of. But some people still choose to do some sort of active care. So they may still be on chemo and want to continue to try and fight the disease. But medically speaking, they're still in that kind of dying stage. So I am expanding our definition a little bit, but the point being that the individual is still dying, actively dying. They may be trying to prolong their life and use other medicine to prolong their life. Not everybody in end of life is necessarily just choosing like comfort care. And the reason I say that for this purposes is because that does come up in the workbook, is that is a part of the choices. So that'll be a little bit more clear here in a few minutes. So before we dive into, I'm really going to go through the workbook that I created, that I kind of edited or tweaked based off of some other people who already created it. And then But before I jump into that, I want to talk a little bit about the reason why end of life planning is so important, especially with regarding supporting people with IDD in doing their end of life planning. So one is empowering people to make, you are empowering people to make their own decisions about their own body and their own death. That's a big deal. To have power over still having choices in how your body is cared for, and how you die, meaning anything from what's in the room, music, care, and making that end of life time as comfortable as possible. And it's because it's not really an enjoyable process, but how much can you make that enjoyable as possible? Being able to make those decisions is really important. Any ounce of control or power a person has in that time is hugely important, because the big thing that they don't have control over is that they're dying. And so any little, it may be seemingly insignificant, but any little decision can really be a big decision and make big impact on an individual going through their end of life, that end of life period. So, and also with regards to people with IDD, many spend a large part of their time with other people trying to control those different aspects of their life. And so having this time be as collaborative as possible and empowering the individual as much as possible to make these decisions has been really beneficial. And I've already seen it with the people that I've done end of life planning. They are noticeably more at peace that they have a plan and their wishes are down on paper and people are going to follow that. So it also helps clergy, funeral directors, other professionals in knowing what the individual wants. So think about all of the different people that are involved in maybe end of life or post life, so after the person dies. So you're talking about doctors, family members, friends, service providers, maybe DSPs, I don't know if I said funeral directors, clergy, any hospice workers, any of your other support professionals or care professionals. All that number gets really high really quickly, and that's a lot of people. And so by having a document or having this workbook available so that people know what the individual wants, there's less question as to what the individual wants, and everybody's able to be more on the same page, which also kind of goes to the next point. This also helps service providers and families and the individual know what that individual wants, and practically speaking, decrease on possible arguments or disagreements. I've already seen this, where the DSP friends have disagreed on what they thought the individual wanted. And when we pulled up the workbook, it was right there. This is what the individual wants. And that immediately the arguments, the debate immediately kind of disappeared and went away. The other thing that I'll note, which is kind of the previous point, is so there are individuals, their family is not involved. And so when they die, sometimes it is up to the service provider and the funeral home to help piece the plan together, piece the funeral together. And so having this workbook, service providers are not, they're not in the business of planning funerals. Most service providers don't have chaplains. And so this, having the workbook really helps to be able to immediately plan the funeral. Another example, I worked with an individual who she did this workbook, and when she died, she did not have family members to help run and orchestrate and plan her funeral. And so that was on me and the funeral director and the DSPs to plan it. And it went so much easier because everything had been written down in this workbook, even from what music she wanted, who she wanted to speak, where she wanted the funeral, what she wanted done to her body as far as post-death plans. All of that was written in there, which made it super easy and smooth, just not a lot of arguments or disagreements because it all came back to what the individual wanted. So super, super helpful. And then it also helps DSPs, your direct support professionals, in knowing they are supporting what the individual wanted. So direct support professionals, they're not hospice workers. They're not signing up for end-of-life care. They're not signing up to work for a hospice. They're working to support people with IDD. And sometimes that means that they end up having to support people in their end-of-life process. And that, but because they aren't trained necessarily specifically in that way, with the end-of-life mindset, there's a lot of anxiety from DSPs of, am I doing the right thing? Am I, they're coping with their own grief and trying to keep professional boundaries. And so by having the workbook, it really, I can't stress enough how much that all stressors, whether or not this is what the person wanted, that really seems to go away, or at least be really minimized. Okay, so end of life planning is important. So this also, for some other reasons, this also helps service providers know what they need to prepare for. So we'll talk a little bit about this later, but when we did this, so I created this workbook, and then what came from that was we did an end of life task force. Absolutely, Oliver. And that is what's going to what I'm going to kind of talk about here. You're absolutely right. People need the DSPs, need to have some end of life training. My point being is when they signed up for the job, they're not necessarily thinking end of life. And so, but we quickly noticed our DSPs aren't necessarily equipped to do this kind of care. And so they're really surprised and not necessarily trained or prepared for when that does happen. And so we wanted to make sure that that was an area that we needed to do better. So with this end of life workbook, we then went through it and looked at, okay, what are all the decisions that a person could make? And then how are we as a service provider actually making sure that we can support these decisions? So if somebody chooses to die at home, what training supports are our DSPs getting? What have they already gotten? And then what do they get once they move into that stage, once the client moves into that stage? But also, even some of those details of the person, maybe the individual is on morphine, so who is giving the morphine? Are all DSPs prepared to administer morphine? What are the state rules? What are the group home rules or the supported living rules? All of that is stuff that we had to then discuss. And we really realized that not all of our DSPs would really be equipped to, and nor did we want to put that stressor on them that all DSPs are capable of administering morphine or other significant medications like that. So that really came out in our task force, and then we have since decided on other ways that we might do that, such as an end-of-life care team and specific DSPs who are trained, equipped to do so can jump in when that situation arises. The final point is that this has already helped us support people in the way they want while they die and after they are dead. So this, we have already seen, we've already seen how much this has really helped the whole process. And then I also want to just point out the notion that many people do assume that people with IDD do not have thoughts or opinions about their end of life or post-life. And this is false. I'm not going to say, notice it doesn't say all, but most people assume that people with IDD don't have thoughts or opinions about their end of life or post-life. Not all people with IDD have preferences or may not be able to communicate those preferences, but many of them are and do have those preferences and would like to be able to communicate that and be given that opportunity. Okay, so now we're just going to dive into the workbook, and I'm going to kind of talk through the parts of this workbook. I have the images on here. I do acknowledge that may not be accessible for maybe screen readers, depending on who is viewing this. I'll talk through some of the things that are on each page. I'm not going to read through it all, but you all will, I'll send you all a copy of these slides in a PDF form, and then I'll also send you all this workbook in a PDF form, which should work with any screen readers or accessibility tools that any of you all may need. So this is just our front page. It's called Thinking Ahead, My Way, My Choice, My Life at End of Life. That all is originally created by Texas Department of Aging and Disability Services. So they are the original creators of this Thinking Ahead workbook. California then kind of tweaked it, and us and Indiana then further tweaked it based to fit kind of our needs or what we're finding might be helpful to add to it or change. And so you see that also on that second page is the credit for the original creators. And then the other thing that I will note is all of this came from a grant from Indiana Bureau of Disability Services. So we were able to do this and a lot of other things as a part of that grant from Indiana Bureau of Disability Services. So we also thank them so much for helping, allowing us to create this. Okay. So in chapter 1, so there is something that I did skip the table of contents, mainly because you're going to see it all. So we do have a table of contents. And then we just dive in. And chapter 1 really is just an introduction and instructions on how to use this workbook. So the first step really is reviewing the whole workbook. We ask you to review the whole workbook before you make your decisions and write down your choices. So then step 2 is to take your time to complete the workbook, fill it out, write down your choices, and then take 2 or more sessions. So take your time with this. This is not designed to sit down and work through the whole thing in one session. This is designed to be kind of a conversation, and I just can't really picture many people that I work with doing this in one sitting, as also the topic is just kind of a heavy topic. So taking 2 or more sessions, and then using the support from a trusted person. So instead of just handing this to the individual, some people may be perfectly fine handing it to, but also making sure that they have a trusted person to maybe go through this with them, and have these conversations. The person that is the trusted person needs to be somebody who's very mindful of not trying to sway the person in their decisions. That your role is really to help them learn and understand what their choices are, and then helping them to get their decisions on the paper. And then step 3 is complete the forms and give copies to the important people. So you'll see the first part of the workbook, people write in what their preferences are, and then at the end, all of those decisions are kind of squished down into 2 or 3 pages, and you rewrite kind of the final decisions. That way, at the first section, you can write in your margins, you can jot down all sorts of ideas. It really is kind of a workbook, whereas the end kind of is your more finished forms that make it easy also to scan into the computer or copy and send to people. And again, you'll see that here in a moment. So then chapter 2 is really just helping the person know why these decisions are important, and helping them know the process of thinking, planning, and then doing. And so that way they are not just making a decision, but they don't understand the decisions that they've just made, or they don't understand the choices. What we want to make sure is that they know what those choices are and what those choices mean, and then before they make any decisions. So we really want to empower people, and part of empowerment is actually understanding what the decisions are. I did not come back and edit this. Pardon me. I will edit this. I clearly got distracted and moved on to something else. But as you heard me say, chapter 3 is that you need to choose the person needs to choose the right person to help. So what does that trusted person mean? Again, that is something that a trusted person really is somebody who can help them talk through or walk through these decisions. I am reading your question, Reverend Dr. Jess. I'm a hospital chaplain, and many of the people I serve with a variety of disabilities, including IDD, tell me about feeling like the healthcare system has given up on them based on ableist views of quality of life. In that context, do you have any recommendations for when, how, where, etc., to introduce this topic? Yes, I know I was trying to give you that professional introduction, Jess. Of course, I know who you are, and it's good to see you, and I hope that we can actually meet up later and talk more and catch up. I was just trying to give you your due diligence of your official name and professional name and title. So yeah, great question. Really, just like any of us can do this end of life planning at any time. In fact, it's, in my opinion, always great to have these conversations when you're not dying, because you never know when something is going to come up, how quickly you might decline, and if there is a point in time when you wouldn't be able to make these decisions. I have about a handful of individuals, and I actually have a wait list of people who are wanting to have this conversation, who are not actively dying, but want to get their thoughts and opinions in their workbook. So the more that actually people here at Stonebelt learn about that this is out there and that this is an option, they're wanting to have this conversation. And so they're actually coming to me to have this conversation, and they are not actively dying. But if the person is in the hospital, they are actively dying, I think it's great to, have that conversation. Or maybe they just realize that they're not actively dying, but they realize that they have a diagnosis that is going to be a part of the rest of their life and could have complications at some point. This might be a time to go ahead and have this conversation just in case it gets to that point. As a person with DD, if a hospital associating person gave me this workbook, I'd assume they'd given up on me living. And once I get an idea, it doesn't leave easily. For sure. I think you're absolutely right, Kate. I used to work in a hospital as a chaplain, and it wasn't even workbook related. I walk in and they know that I was the chaplain, and they're like, "I'm not dying. Why are you here?" So there's even that alarm, not even doing this workbook, and like a chaplain walking in, and then everybody like freaks out and is like, "I'm not dying. Why am I on your list? Why are you visiting me?" But also, you're absolutely right, Kate. If that was somebody else, a physician, this may be triggering or alarming because they may think that this isn't kind of a comfort conversation. This is coming within the medical field. Absolutely. And so then maybe you hand it to a friend, or somebody who, depending on how your hospital works, a social worker, or just letting people know that this resource exists. And if they're ever wanting to do their end of life planning, as they're thinking ahead in their future, this workbook exists, and then giving that to them. Absolutely. I like what you all are thinking of, being sensitive to who might be coming in and suggesting to do the workbook. Absolutely. Absolutely spot on. Okay, so chapter 4 is this is the workbook part. So this is not the final decisions. This is when people are starting to think and learn what their options are and starting to jot down what might be their preferences. So again, on that first page, on page 4, on the image on the left, you see the reminder that every person has the right to die with dignity and respect and feel at peace. And so they are also learning throughout this workbook what their choices are. And then even starting to think a few questions or things to trigger some thoughts that people might start thinking about. And then plan. So it's a reminder, you'll see this throughout the whole workbook, a reminder of think, plan, do. So now we are in kind of the planning stage. And so first question, where do you want to be? So are you at home? Do you want to be with family? Do you want to be in the hospital, a hospice house if that exists, or a nursing home or something like that? So starting to think about where that might be. If they can choose where they want to die, where would that be? Because that's going to then help them answer the next set of questions, right? So how do I want to be cared for? And these are some basic questions. So when you're having these conversations, more things may come up. And this is why it's nice to do this with a trusted person, because I don't want to overwhelm people with gobs and gobs of choices or options on this worksheet. That's just really overwhelming. So all I'm giving is some basic examples, some basic choices, but as you're having the conversation or learning about the person, you might tweak these and or add some other options to these. So how do you want to be cared for? Have your family and friends nearby. Have a personal care that helps me feel comfortable. Playing your favorite music. So I helped a woman do this, and she had her favorite music playing every day. She wanted to have her clergy come and visit her. She wanted friends and family, and so we created because she made that decision, we as the service provider made it a visiting schedule so that the people who lived in a home with her knew who was going to be coming in and out. So we weren't disrupting her roommates. So really using this also then as a tool for the service provider or other professionals, other people to kind of know what they need to do in order to make that work. Just a great, it really helped them figure out what we needed to do in order to make that happen. And then where do I want my things to go after I die? Do they want to donate to particular people? Do they want it just to be donated to a particular company or charity? What gifts, what monetary gifts or other types of gifts do I want to send to people? So because I know Sally would really love this necklace. I want to give this necklace to Sally. Okay, we're going to write that down. And we're going to kind of itemize that and make sure that gets to Sally. My body, what do you want? What does the person want done to their body after they die? So thinking about if they want to be buried, if they want to be cremated. Again, not all options are on here. I know that there's more and more options of what to do with your body, but these are kind of the basics, especially because I don't know your towns. Each of our towns are different. Each of our communities are different. And so there's even different options depending on where you live. Do you want your organs donated? Do you want to donate your body to science? So just going through what those options are. How do you want to be remembered? So this is moving into the funeral. What kind of funeral? I did this with a woman, and her celebration of life was just absolutely beautiful. And it was very clear. Everybody who left the celebration of life walked away saying, oh my gosh, this is so her. This was like her perfect personality. Well, the reason was because she planned it. She wanted a celebration of life, not more of a memorial or funeral style. She wanted everybody to wear bright colors at her celebration of life. She chose what music she wanted. And that included Elvis and some great music. She said who she wanted to sing. One of her roommates, she wanted to sing at her funeral because he had sung to her every night. This is somebody that, was here at Stonebelt, and her roommate sang to her every night. And so she wanted him to sing at the funeral. Just any of those details that a person wants, put them in here. One, it makes you are following what the person wants, but two, you now have a planned service, and how easy is that? That's also logistically a great thing. And finally, in chapter 4, we have just thinking about people, thinking about how you want people to remember you at the celebration or service. So again, this is just a few more details as to some of the choices to kind of end that section. On the right-hand side, you will see a few additional questions that go a little bit more in depth of the care while the person is dying. So what kind of pictures do they want? Do they want visitors? So it gets into a little bit more of a little bit more detail in this section. And this section actually comes from 5 Wishes, which is another organization that we utilize some of their material. And so this just goes into a little bit more in depth, but I thought that they were some good options here that I wanted to make sure that we included as well. Finally, so then chapter 5 actually goes into some specifics of medical treatment. What do they define is their quality of life? What even is life support treatment? So you actually have the definitions there that people can go off of. And I'll also add, we tried to make this as plain language as possible with a few respectful images to help kind of understand what was going on. But this is not even accessible to everyone, as you all probably know. And so you may have to further explain or add more pictures to somebody who maybe doesn't communicate as well with words. So you may have to tweak this. So use this really just as kind of your starting point or as your guide, but you are going to know those individuals a little bit better. And again, so when you're thinking about with your trusted person, you're also going to be thinking about what is more meaningful. So what is that quality of life for you, for that individual, and helping them think through that, and helping them really actually understand that. And again, so this then talks about, okay, do you want, if my doctors say that I'm likely to die in a short time and life support would only postpone my death, what are my choices? So you'll see this is very similar to a lot of legal end of life forms. This is just written a little bit more in plain language to help people understand what they're actually signing or choosing. Now this prompts people to choose a healthcare rep if they don't have one already. So healthcare rep, what I mean by that is not somebody that just makes all the healthcare decisions. This is only when they get to a point when they are not capable of making those decisions anymore. So maybe they're non-responsive, or cognitively, they're just really maybe cognitively they've declined with like dementia of some sort. And so they're unable to make further decisions. Who is your healthcare rep going to be? And again, this just helps to further, I know there's other forms out there, but this helps to just better explain it so the person actually knows what they are signing and the decisions that they're actually making. And then, so from here, this just reminds people at this point, you can change any of these decisions. You don't have to, you can always go back and redo this, change it, add to it. This doesn't have to be written in stone. This section, before we get into the final forms, this is very Indiana geared. So I wrote this for, this is going to go to Indiana Bureau of Disability Services. And so this is very personalized for the rules and laws within the state of Indiana. So I encourage you all to know what your resources are in your state if you don't know already. And maybe you create your own workbook for your state, and write out what are some of those tools if people need to have further questions or have further needs. So that's just a resource section. And then we have a glossary, because we know that we didn't really necessarily define every single thing in here. And people come to this with very different experiences and previous knowledge. So this is a glossary that just we further define some of the terms that are even used in this workbook, to help people understand what those terms actually mean. And we try to use, again, as much plain language and even give examples, to help people really understand, including the trusted person. The trusted person may not even know. I get a lot of people that don't know the difference between palliative care and hospice. And so that even makes the distinction on there. Again, our acknowledgements page. And then this is kind of the final forms. The biggest suggestion is this is going to be different from you all. So in the state of Indiana, just in the last few years, the state of Indiana got rid of all of our advanced directives forms, official advanced directives forms. They got rid of all of them. I'm not going to go into the decisions and why, but they officially got rid of them. So this really is a way to, the state of Indiana does say that if you have anything written, any of your plans, that will be, if that is written down, that will be legally supported. So what we did was we took all of the things that the other the individual has already worked on previously in this workbook. So all of the decisions that they've written down, gone through, marked things that they've checked, additional preferences that they've written down. Now you're going to go into here and write those specifics. So this is kind of an advanced directives, going through some of those things, making sure that, yes, a witness has signed, so it'll be helpful and hold up in court if anybody wants to argue against it. And then these are all of the, you'll see, it all looks familiar. It's just consolidated so that it makes it really easy for you to scan or copy and send to the hospital, to family members, to the service provider. So it just consolidates all of those decisions that the person previously made into these 2 pages. Well, 3 pages. And then, so then this is the 5 wishes, that is kind of the additional choices. Okay, so that is basically the end of the workbook. I'm gonna check my time, because I do want to leave time for further questions, even though a lot of you have been asking questions. So go ahead, start asking questions in the Q&A box. And I'm going to wrap up with this slide, and then I'll answer your questions. So just additional tips. I've kind of already said this. Please use clear language. Do not use slang or cute language, what I call cute language. Just say what you mean. Say dead, dying, death, died, using that clear language. Those aren't dirty words. They're true, they're reality, they're clear. Using you're passing away, you're lost, all those other kind of cute language that we have for death, dying, dead, is confusing. And also use clear language when you're describing what's happening. So yes, I will be emailing you the presentation. Absolutely. So please use that clear language. So if somebody still doesn't know what cremation means, describe it. Don't be afraid to offend them. If you are calm, frank, clear, and explaining it like it's just normal and it's what is, then they're gonna feel less anxious, less nervous, and less weirded out. If you're weirded out and anxious and like icky about it, then they're gonna likely mirror that, because they're thinking, oh, this is something to be anxious about. but you say, okay, when the person dies and they have no feeling in their body, their heart isn't beating, they're not moving, and it's just their body that is left. The body is taken to a really hot oven and it's burned and it turns into ashes. And then those ashes are what you can spread or put in an urn, or, just describe it very clearly, very as a matter of fact. I have yet to have somebody freak out. And actually, most of the time, they're really excited because they're like, oh, that's how it happens. And they want to know. They want to know what's happening to their body. What choice are they actually making here? So describe it honestly and openly, and keep your own anxiety in check in order to decrease any fear or anxiety that they might be feeling then. And then use examples and identify more choices. I think I already said this. Identify more choices as you get to know that person, and what other choices or things that they might want. Okay, I'm going to end there, and I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to try and answer some more of these questions. Okay. Kate, are people with IDD eligible for assisted suicide where it is legal? I honestly don't know. So I would check, mainly because I'm the state of Indiana. It's not legal here. So I don't know about that. But that is something that is very important to learn. If it's a choice for other people, I would think it would be a choice for people with IDD, if they understand what those choices are, and know the consequences and all of that. So great question. George, I see your hand, and I will get to you here in a moment. Oliver, a very damaging sort of message would be, when you are with Jesus, your body will work fine. They are already made in the image of God. Oliver, you make a great point. So that kind of goes with what I would also say. Any of that, if you're trying to make a person feel good about their own death, I would question, why are you trying to make them feel good? Just let them be upset, because not finding out that you're dying is upsetting. And so there's no real need to cheer the person up. That's a me need, because I'm uncomfortable with you being upset. And then that's when we say things like, when you're with Jesus, your body will work fine. You'll be happier in heaven, or whatever that case may be. And also, you're projecting your own beliefs onto the other person, and they may not believe that, or that might not be helpful. It might be hurtful. They may say, hey, I have a disability, and I was born this way, so why would I be healed or cured in heaven? Why is that necessary? Absolutely. All right, George, I am going to see where you are. All right, I'm going to allow you to talk, and if you have a question. You should be permitted to talk if you can just unmute yourself.
Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't really have a question. I appreciated the seminar, and a lot of things you talked about we do here at Selinsgrove Center.
Great.
Just a little different way within the institutional setting.
Well, great. And I might have to connect with you. I like to know other chaplains and people in the field. And I feel like we have met before. I'm just terrible with names, so forgive me if we have.
We met at the Theology and Disability Conference in Boston.
That's how I'm knowing your name and your voice. But yeah, we'll have to connect more and talk more, for sure. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all for being here. And I hope you all have a blessed day. Take care.